We now turn to one of the day's most interesting headlines. A woman in Canada has been diagnosed with climate change. You heard that right. Diagnosed with climate change. She had a problem. She went to an emergency room. A doctor attended to her and then wrote climate change on the diagnosis slip. What were her symptoms? It's something that a lot of us will be able to relate to. So are you and I also suffering from climate change? Our next report tells you.
Is the rapidly changing weather making you sick? Are you struggling to breathe during extreme summers? Is your health condition getting worse because of harsh winters? Well, you could be suffering from climate change. It's a real diagnosis now, courtesy this man, Dr. Kyle Merritt. He practices at an emergency room in British Columbia. He is now making headlines for clinically diagnosing a patient with climate change. The patient is over 70 years old. She lives on a trailer somewhere in British Columbia. What are her symptoms? This woman has asthma. The record heat wave in Canada made it harder for her to breathe. The doctor knew what the problem was. It was the rising temperature. But could he cure it? Not immediately and definitely not alone. So he wrote climate change on the patient's chart. A lot of us too could be suffering from climate change. America's Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says climate change can increase our cardiovascular diseases, exacerbate respiratory disease, even lead to injuries and premature deaths. Try to think about it. The link between climate change and ill health isn't all that complicated. Take the example of floods. The stagnant water gives rise to waterborne diseases. The extreme weather event also affects our mental health. Let's take the example of a heat wave next. Extreme heat leads to heat rash, heat cramps, and it can also lead to serious problems like heat strokes. We often ignore these problems. We blame them on the weather rather than climate change. This headline-making diagnosis has now set a precedent. We can choose to mock it, criticize it, laugh it off as a first world problem, or indulge in howeaboutery. But here's something that cannot be overstated. The faster we learn to acknowledge the problem of climate change, the faster we can go about addressing it. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.